Yeah, it's awesome.
Sweet, dude.
Yeah, hey, hopefully everybody can hear you and hear me. I'm just going to play a little bit, make sure everybody out there can hear my voice and hear my guitar.
I can hear it.
All right, perfect. Well, as long as you can hear it, that's good.
So, guys, if you can hear Steve okay, you can hear me okay, please just put yes in the chat box. That would be awesome. And also, tell us where you're from. As everybody's filtering in here, it'd be great to know your city, maybe where you're from, your state. And what would be also really cool is if you could tell us what you hope to get out of this webinar. Maybe just one cool simple thing, so Steve and I can check that out. Of course, today we're going to be talking about 12-bar blues, so I hope that's why you're here.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, 12-bar blues, if you don't really understand what 12-bar blues is or how it works, it's absolutely crucial to, A, learning how to play the blues, and B, learning how to jam with other players. So it's really important that you learn that.
So that's what we're going to talk about today, guys. The 12-bar blues, and Steve's going to break it down on exactly how it works, so you can walk away from this webinar with, hopefully, if you already understand it, a better understanding of how it all works. And if you don't have any clue about it, then this is going to be perfect for you. There's a lot of people out there who have played sort of bluesy stuff or played some rock and roll or just kind of play, but they don't really understand the chord structures of the 12-bar blues.
Yeah.
So we're going to break that down for you today.
Yeah. When I was learning how to play when I was younger, one of the coolest things was when somebody actually showed me how the 12-bar blues works. I realized how important it is for jamming with other people because, like, if you get together with somebody and you've never played with them before and you go, well, what song do you know? Well, that's cool. I don't know that one. Well, what song do you know? And then you say a song and they go, well, that's cool, but I don't know that one. But when you say, let's jam some 12-bar blues in the key of G or the 12-bar blues in the key of A or something like that, that's something that is sort of a common language to guitar players. So it's really important to learn how to do that to actually play with other people. Man,
that's huge, guys. Once you get this, you can literally walk into a room of musicians and just, if there's a bass player there, a keyboard player there, a couple of guitarists or whatever, you can just jump in and jam like in minutes, right? And swap licks and people can just go around the room with their solos.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I was going to say, when I was younger, I used to have a buddy, and he and I would get together, usually at his house, and we would play 12-bar blues for hours. Like, what we would do is he would play 12 measures, and then I would solo, and then I would play 12 measures, and then he would solo, and we would just go back and forth like that for forever. It was awesome.
Yeah, you can. And once you recognize this structure, guys, you're going to hear it in rock and roll. I mean, you can kick in the distortion pedal and get the rhythm a little bit. You got yourself a kind of grinding rock tune. You can hear it in jazz, right? You can take these. Well, I won't get into all the details. We won't steal our thunder just yet.
Yeah, right. Well, let me just start off by saying this. In order to learn the 12-bar blues, needless to say, you have to have some knowledge of chords, right? Mm-hmm. And in the course, I go through a bunch of different chords and notes on the guitar and learning where everything is and all that kind of stuff. So if you're with us right now and you're not exactly sure of everything that I talk about, don't get worried about it, okay? For me, an A chord is an A chord. Whether you play it here, or you play it here, or you play it up here, or wherever it is you want to play it, you can learn more things, but the most important thing is it doesn't matter whether you have 7 places you can play an A chord. It matters that you have one. So as long as you've got one place to play it, you can do these things. But I just want you to know that we're kind of jumping right into, the 12-bar blues. So we need to know something about chords and stuff like that. So we're going to touch on it a little bit, but I just don't want you to worry if you don't know all of these things. We're going to cover all that stuff in the course anyway.
Right.
So anyway, you can just kind of interject and lead me as needed, Dan, as I start discussing this whole thing. But basically, if you think about the blues, what makes the blues so unique, right? What makes the blues different than rock or metal or country?
It sounds bluesy.
Well, that's the thing is the term blues is a style of music, but when we say something like, usually when people think of blues, they think of a rhythm, right? Something like that is what reminds them of being bluesy.
Right.
And there's all kinds of different ways of doing these sorts of things. But that's kind of what blues is. For me, what is important for you to walk away from today is understanding that what makes blues so unique is that when we say the word rock, rock can mean 1,000 things. When we say rock, you might think of Metallica and you might think of the Rolling Stones, and they're nothing like each other, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, categories sometimes can get really confusing for people.
Yeah.
When you say metal or you say country, again, it means all kinds of different things. But when you say blues, there are really two things that come to a guitar player or a musician who plays blues. Two things that come to mind. Number one is a specific kind of rhythm. And number two is the 12-bar blues progression. As I just kind of said earlier, what's cool about the blues is if I was with Dan right now, if Dan was here at my studio and we were going to jam, Dan and I may not know the same songs together, but if I said, well, let's just have some fun and jam some blues, or I went out to see a friend of mine's band, and I don't play the same songs that their band plays, I might get up and just jam some sort of bluesy song, right? I might play, something like that, and it just turns into a 12-bar blues jam, essentially. So that's what we want to talk about is what is 12-bar blues and how do you do it?
Okay.
Make sense?
So, yeah, this is perfect, Steve. So what I really wanted to do today, guys, is to make sure that we stay laser focused on one thing you can walk away from and actually implement in your playing. Okay. So we're not going to throw a ton of stuff at you. This is going to be keep it super tight. So Steve just talked about rhythm, kind of what defines a blues. And then as far as this discussion goes, we're going to just keep it on how the 12-bar blues actually works. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Dan, if you could do me a favor, your vocal is cutting out just a little bit. Can you kind of stay closer to your microphone?
Is this better, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Should I just stay in that move?
Just don't move at all. No. Okay. It does sound better, though. I can hear you better. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Now I'm distracted. I'm not sure what I wanted to say.
Oh, sorry.
I can't move.
That is my fault. No, he's right, though. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on what 12-bar blues means. Well, 12-bar blues, 12-bar means 12 measures. So what happens here, what makes the blues so unique is music can be bluesy. Okay, music can have blues influences. Music can sound like it's from the blues. We're talking about the blues, which starts with this 12-measure sequence that gets repeated over and over and over. So if you watch B.B. King or Stevie Ray Vaughan or ZZ Top or Joe Bonamassa or all kinds of different players like that, you're going to hear songs that sound bluesy, and then you're going to hear songs that are 12-bar blues. They all have them. You'd be hard-pressed to find a B.B. King song that isn't 12-bar blues, to be honest with you.
Why don't you play it?
Absolutely.
And just a 12-bar so we can get it in our ears.
Absolutely.
So we all know what we're talking about.
Okay, and I'm just going to play a real basic version of 12-bar blues. Okay, so here's... Cool. Well, I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to play in the key of A. So I'm just going up to an A chord here, and I'm going to go... And then it would start all over again.
Sweet.
Now, I know... tell me if you've heard this. Say yes if you've heard this kind of thing before, right?
Yes.
Whether it's on the radio or on a song that you listen to or even commercials sometimes. Like, my kids have now adopted this thing because they've heard me do it so many times that they'll go, hey, Dad, there's a blues tune or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what it is, that structure right there. And what's cool about it is it's 12 measures long. It consists of 3 chords, and we're going to talk about those 3 chords so you understand how this works. But the progression, the movement of those chords is the same every time. And there's 2 things that make that super cool. And then, Dan, if you've got something, there's 2 things that make that cool. Number one is you as a guitar player can become more confident with your playing because you know where to go. You know what comes next. And if you're already there, or someday you get to the point where you're going to learn how to solo, this becomes a really important thing because you can anticipate where the chords are going while you're playing, which is just huge.
Got it. So all I was going to say is that, guys, if you break this down to the most simple element, it's 3 chords played in a certain order.
That's right.
That's it. Sometimes you repeat a chord. Sometimes you play it 2 or 3 or 4 times. Sometimes you play it just once. But the bottom line is you can play a 12-bar blues and you can jam with other musicians just because you know 3 little chords. They can be 3 power chords. They're just chords that just go in a certain order. And they can have variations on that 12-bar blues. But the one that Steve's showing you right here is just the basic one.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, we're just keeping it as straight as possible. So what we need to do is we need to understand, first of all, what are the 3 chords? And then second of all, what's the 12-bar blues? How does this work?
Right.
So let me explain to you the 3 chords, okay? Now, these chords, you don't have to know a bunch of theory. I got a nice, easy way of showing you this, okay? The 3 chords that you're going to use are what we refer to as the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords in whatever key you're in. Now, that doesn't mean you have to know all your keys and all your key signatures. You don't have to know all that. What I want you to think about is if I was in the key of A, for instance, which I am right now. If I was in the key of A, what's my first chord? A.
A.
That's it, okay? Now, you may have played other songs before, and this is going to ring a bell as I keep talking because you're going to go, hey, I've played those chords to get, many times together. But what I do is I'm just going to count up on my hand. If I'm in the key of A, okay, and no matter what key we're in, what we're going to do is we're just going to start on the first note, which is A, and we're just going to count up. So A, B, C, D, and E. We're not going to worry about sharps and flats. We're not going to worry about any of that stuff. We're just counting A, B, C, D, E. A, D, and E would be my first note, my 4th note, and my 5th note, which also means it's my first chord, my 4th chord, and my 5th chord. Now think about this.
Awesome.
A, D, and E. If I play those chords, A, D, and E, I could play songs like that. Right? Tom Petty, there's literally 1,000 songs I could play with those 3 chords together. Okay? So again, the human brain always, whenever I talk about this stuff, people always go, well, what about the key of G? And what about the key of C? And what about the key of F sharp? Don't worry about every key on the planet right now. Let's just start with one key and develop that, and then we can always move it into other keys, which again, we'll learn how to do all that kind of stuff. It's called transposition. We'll learn how to do that in the guitar course, but let's just start with one key. So we've got an A, a D, and an E chord. So those are our 3 chords. Now we're going to learn how those 3 chords work in this 12-measure sequence. So what I like to do is I like to explain to people, and if you have a piece of paper and a pencil, or you have something handy, I would grab it, and you can just write this down any way that makes sense to you, okay? What I do is I take the 12-bar blues, and I break it into 3 pieces. So each piece is 4 measures long. So I have first piece, middle piece, last piece, okay? So
there's 3 sections with 4 measures each.
That's right, right.
Okay.
So my first section, okay, is 4 measures long. And all I'm going to do for 4 measures is play the 1 chord. That's all I'm going to do for those first 4 measures. Okay. So I'm just going to take a plain old A chord here. Okay, if you play bar chords or whatever, that's perfectly fine, but I'm just going to use a plain old A chord, and I'm just going to give it this kind of thing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 4 4 2 3 4. So for 4 measures, and there's a million things we can do with the rhythms and all this stuff, but let's just understand this thing first. Okay? So we have 4 measures of a 1 chord. Now, why am I calling it a 1 instead of calling it an A? Dan, do you have an answer?
Well, why don't we ask our students?
Okay.
Who knows the answer to that question?
Why am I calling it a 1 chord instead of just calling it an A like it is?
Yay.
Okay, hold on
because you're in the key of A, and the first chord in the key of A is A.
That's right. That's right. Okay. The other reason, which I see some people are saying too, the other reason is because then we can move it in other keys. Because if I'm in the key of G, what's my first chord? G. If I'm in the key of D, what's my first chord? D.
D.
So when we talk about 1 and 4 and 5, the reason we're talking about it that way is because maybe we don't want to play in the key of A. Maybe we want to play in the key of G or some other key. So learning how to refer to this as a 1, 4, 5 is going to be really beneficial down the line, okay? So,
hey, let me just clarify one thing.
Yeah.
There's some people maybe confused with this. Steve and I are using the term bar and measure interchangeably. The bar line that you see in a piece of sheet music that actually is a line that's drawn vertically between two bar lines is one measure. The bar line is what actually creates your measures. So if you just had a bunch of notes across a page, no bar lines, you wouldn't have I guess it'd be one ginormous measure.
Right.
But in order to keep it structured, we use bar lines. So the measure is the stuff between the bar lines, and the bar is the thing that actually creates the measure. So when we say 12 bar blues, and then Steve starts talking about we're going to play this chord for 12 or 4 measures, that will be 4 bar lines if you're looking at the sheet of music. Okay?
Right.
So to clarify that.
And in the rock and roll world too, bar is a slang for measure. Like when people say bar, they're just, it's a slang for measure. So that's kind of what that is too. But yeah,
so a bar, a measure, I think is the same thing.
Yep, that's right. So okay, so we've got this one section, this first section for 4 measures or 4 bars, whatever you want to call it. That's just a 1 chord, and in this case, we're playing in the key of A, so I'm plugging in an A chord for 4 measures. Now I'm going to go to the middle section, which is also 4 measures long. Okay? But in this section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a new chord. I'm going to go to my 4 chord. Now, what is the 4 chord in the key of A? Remember, you can count up. What is the 4 chord in the key of A?
A, B, C, D.
D. So I'm going to go to the D chord now. In this middle section right here, I'm going to the 4 chord, which in the key of A is D. A, B, C, D, just like Dan just counted. So I'm going to go to that chord for 2 measures of this 4. I'm going to go to it for the first 2 measures. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. And then for the next 2 measures of this 4 measure sequence, I'm going to go back to the 1 chord, which is the A chord. So what I'm going to do here before we go on, and hopefully you've got your guitar with you so you can play along with me here, and if you don't, run and grab it super quick and then come on back, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to play the first section, which was all A, the A chord for 4 measures. Then we're going to play the middle section here, which went D chord, D chord, A chord, A chord. Okay? We're going to play that together. So here we go.
So all we're doing is playing the first 4 measures of 12-bar blue, then the next 4 measures of this 12-bar blues. So this is 8 measures of the 12. And there's only going to be 2 chords in what Steve's about to play.
Yep.
The A chord and the D chord.
So here we go. 1 and 2 and ready, go. A, second measure, third measure, fourth measure. Now here we go. We got to go to the D. Again. Then we go back. And it's already beginning to sound like music with just that 1 chord change in there. Okay?
Yep.
Now this brings us to the end, which is arguably the coolest part of this whole thing. We're going to the last 4 measures now, which is often referred to as the turnaround. Okay? Because if you were a bass player and a guitar player is soloing for 10 minutes, this part here is the part that wakes them up and goes, "Oh, we got to start all over again." Okay? So the turnaround, it tells us we're turning around and we're going to start all over again, okay? So this last 4 measures here, we're now going to introduce the 5 chord. So remember the 5 chord, if we count up A, B, C, D, E. So we're going to go to a 5 chord here, okay?
Cool.
So let me explain to you this last 4 measures before I play it, though, okay?
Okay.
What we're going to do, and I want you to answer this. We'll see if anybody can get this. So in this last 4 measures, I'm going to play 5 for a measure, 4 for a measure, and then I'm going to play 1 for 2 measures. So I'm going 5, 4, 1, 1. 5, 4, 1, 1. What are those chords? Plug them in and put them in the chat. What are those chords? What would it be? 5, 4, 1, 1. And remember, we're in the key of A here.
Mm-hmm. Who's got the answer? Which chords are represented by the 5, the 4, and the 1 in the key of A?
And put them in order.
Yeah. Who's got the answer? Oh, some people do.
Okay, perfect. So there it is.
Yep.
There it is. So it's E, D, and then A for 2 measures. A, and then A. So if you think about it, this last 4 measures is the introduction of the 5 chord, which in this case is E. So that 5 chord is what perks us up and goes, hey, we're going to be starting all over again. So I'm going to play 5, 4, 1, 1, which in this case would be E, D, A, A. So let's play that measure, or excuse me, that section together. Those last 4 measures, or those last 4 bars, E, D, A, A. Let's play that together. 1 and 2 and ready, go. E. Go to your 4 chord, which is D, and your 1 chord. And again. And then we just start all over, and we stay on A again and start all over. So before we move on, here's what I want you to learn how to see, and you can use a piece of paper right now, but eventually you're going to want to kind of visualize this. 3 sections. First section is 1, 1, 1, 1. Second section is 4, 4, 1, 1. And the third section, the turnaround, the final section is 5, 4, 1, 1.
Mm-hmm.
That is the basic structure of 12-bar blues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can twist and turn and morph this thing into a million different things as we go, okay? But this is the first place to begin to understand terminology, like Dan and I have been saying, like bar and measure and all these different kinds of things, and 1, 4, 5, understanding what those things are, and then being able to play this thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you get together with somebody and you say, hey, let's play 12-bar blues in the key of A, they're going to be thinking something very, 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 very similar to what you're thinking, right? Again, depending on how they learned it, they might play a 4 chord right here or a 5 chord right here. And again, in the course, we talk about all that kind of stuff, the variations that we do in a 12-bar sequence, okay? But the variations are very small. It's not like you twist this thing upside down or anything. You don't do that. You don't.
Don't start on the 5 chord.
That's right. That's right. You don't.
Don't start on the 7th chord.
That's right. So if that kind of makes sense, that's how this thing is built. So what I think we should do real quick before we move on, let's try this together. Okay?
Cool.
So we're going to play this whole 12-bar sequence together. So again, hopefully you've got your guitar with you. And let's get ready on A, and we're going to go 1 and 2 and ready, go. 1, 2, 4. Here we go to the middle section, so we got to go to the 4 chord. D. D. We got to get back to the 1 chord, which is A. 1. There you go. Now we go to the turnaround, which is the 5 chord, E. To the D, 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord.
Nice. Very cool,
That's the
Steve.
structure. Yeah, that's the structure of 12-bar blues. That's how it works.
That is the very basic 12-bar blues, guys. And if you can get that, you can walk in and play with some folks. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
I saw you straining. I leaned in. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. I do this all day long. So I actually have a backrest that I've never rested on ever. I never.
Well, maybe I should just quit being lazy and just sit up.
This is how I sit
like
all
I'm in
day long.
class. Yes, professor. You're not slouch. Hold your shoulders back. Yes, sir. So look, guys, this is the 12-bar blues, the very most basic element of blues playing. We have barely even scratched the surface on what there is to learn about blues, right? This is just like the foundation of everything. Mm-hmm. You can take this exact chord structure. You can change the chords from just regular old major chords to dominant seventh chords, which just makes it sound even more bluesy. You can add a rhythm element into it, and I'm going to ask you to do some of this here in just a minute. When you add a little bit of rhythm into it, it can amp up the bluesiness a little more. You can go to a clean tone and play minor sevenths, and it gives it a completely different sound that you may have heard in some blues songs. They sound kind of like minorish, but they're bluesy, and usually they're slower. That's another element. But so, I mean, basically all of music is either harmony or rhythm, right? And so what Steve's showing you right now is the most fundamental element of blues playing.
Okay, so again, let's just keep going so you can walk away from this having something that's tangible that you're going to be able to use in your playing, which is awesome. So we've just learned how to play this 12-bar blues using open chords, okay? Here's the thing that just blew me away, and this is going to require you to know some things about your fretboard and stuff like that, which, again, we cover. But let's say I knew my bar chords, my 6th and 5th string bar chords. So I wanted to play the 12-bar blues in the key of A, like I just did, but instead of playing it with open chords, I'm going to play them with bar chords. So I have A and D and E. Now, again, you need to know your 6th string and 5th string bar chords, and you would learn this in the course if you need to. But A is up here on the 5th fret of the 6th string, and the D chord, my 4 chord, is located directly underneath me on the 5th string. And before I even go any further, please understand the power of this. Because if I wanted to be in the key of G and play a 12-bar blues, I could simply move down to the 3rd fret, which is G, and now I'm going to call this my 1 chord, because I'm in the key of G, and my 4 chord is located directly underneath it. So no matter where you go on the 6th string, once you find the key that you want to be in, let's say it's a weird key like the key of F sharp, right? And maybe you don't know your key signatures and you don't need to. Here's the cool thing. You can go to F sharp on the 6th string, which means you got to know the notes on the 6th string. And again, we talk about all that. But here's my 1 chord. If I want my 4 chord, where is it? Directly below me on the 5th string. There's my 4 chord. So I could technically play a 12-bar blues in any key.
That's super huge.
Yeah, so let's keep going just so you got this, so it makes sense to you. So here's my 1 chord. I'm going to go back to the key of A, which is what we've been working with. I've got my 1 chord here at the 5th fret. My 4 chord is located directly underneath me. And then my 5 chord would be 2 frets higher. That's where my 5 chord would be. So I'd have 1, 4, and then 2 frets higher at the 7th fret would be my 5 chord. 1, 4, 5. If I wanted to play 12-bar blues in the key of G, I'd move down to G and play 1, 4, 5. If I wanted to play the 12-bar blues in the key of F, 4, 5. That's why learning how to think of this as 1, 4, 5 is absolutely crucial for you. But now all of a sudden you can see this is the beauty of guitar. There's a visual thing happening here where we can move this 12-bar blues, this 1, 4, 5 thing around the guitar. Mm-hmm. So that's just something I want you to walk away from being able to use. So if you needed to play the 12-bar blues in the key of B, you've already learned the 12-bar blues. You're already aware of this 1, 4, 5 idea. You just need to find where B is on the 6th string and plot it in there. So
super cool.
Yeah.
So just to whet their appetite about kind of what you can do and the power with this 12-bar blues, Steve, let's say, looks like all we've done so far is we play some open chords that were major. We play some major bar chords. So could you give us an idea if we just change the chord from major to dominant seventh.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you don't know what that is, don't worry. Just listen. You'll immediately hear the difference.
Right. So I'm going to give it a little bit, now that I'm playing bar chords, I'm going to give it a little more rhythmic element too. So I'm going to give it this thing. Because I'm playing bar chords, I can actually lift my fingers a little bit and I can kind of stop these strings, so I get a little more bluesy rhythm. I'm just going to play a little bit of the 12-bar blues so you can hear what it sounds like as major, and then I'll change these to what Dan is referring to as the 7th chord, or the dominant 7th chord, which again, I talk about all that stuff, but here we go.
Cool.
So that would be major. Now let's take those two chords and convert them into 7th chords. So I'm going to take this A, and I'm going to turn it into this. And now all of a sudden you hear this. I will stop because it's hard to stop once you get going. So
it is. Let me throw something else at you since we're just kind of jamming here.
Sure.
Okay, so what he was playing right there, right, was he started off with the major, then he went to the dominant 7th chord. Now there's another super cool chord that sounds complicated, but it really ain't, which is that 9th chord, which is really fun to play on the 4th and 5th, right? So if you could give us an idea, I'm just going to, here's how smart Steve is. I'm just going to throw some chords at him. He can play them perfectly. So what I want you to do is play the 1 chord with the dominant 7th.
Okay.
The 4 chord is a dominant 9th.
Okay.
And the 5th chord is a dominant 9th.
Okay.
And maybe you guys can pick it up, the difference or not. It's subtle.
And I'm going to one-up you because I'm going to take
I'm not giving you a clue.
Well, no, I got it. I'm going to give the 5 chord a sharp 9. I'm going to give the 5 chord the Jimi Hendrix sound. Okay, so we've got
so
the 1 chord, dominant? Which is going to be 7th.
Okay, so go ahead.
So you want the 7th for the 1 chord.
Yeah.
And then the 4 chord, you want it to sound 9th, which sounds really nice.
Yeah.
And then the 5 chord, I'm going to make that into the sharp 9, which is the Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze chord. Okay. Now again, don't worry about, you're going to learn all this anyway, but now listen to the blues when I change these. So my A chord becomes A7, my D chord becomes D9, and my E chord becomes E sharp 9, or raise 9. Okay. So now I get this.
Sweet.
And this demands a cooler rhythm anyway.
Yes.
So when I go, yeah, I mean, it's so, that's the thing is people get this misconception about playing guitar oftentimes, and I had the same thing when I was younger, or more naive maybe is the better word, that guitar playing is all about soloing. And guitar playing is not all about soloing. Guitar playing is about learning how to create groove. And groove almost always starts with rhythm. And then we learn how to solo. But, like, you know, if you get out in the real world and you start playing with other musicians and things like that, you spend 95% of your time playing rhythm and 5% of your time soloing. I'm not saying soloing isn't important. And, of course, we talk about soloing in the course and all that sort of thing. But developing a really good sense of rhythm is what makes other players want to play with you. And being able to take these, you know, these simple chord ideas and embellish them a little bit. So there's really 2 things we're talking about here. Number 1 is rhythm. And then number two is chords and learning how to really understand how these two things work together to make super cool stuff. You know, that's awesome. My opinion anyway. So,
are you up for one more challenge?
Of course.
All right. I want to throw Steve a challenge here. Okay. So we're going to go minor. We're going to slow it down. And I want to show them that it's still the same 1-4-5 structure. Okay. We're just changing the quality of the chord from major or dominant to minor. So what I want you to do is play the 1 chord as minor seventh, a minor seventh. The 4 chord as a minor ninth. And the 5 chord is a minor ninth.
Okay.
And then you can throw in that dominant, that sharp 9 that hinders. So maybe you can kind of mix it up for us.
Yeah, minor I tend to use the regular 9, but we could do it either way. So, okay, so we've got he's saying we're going to take this A major chord here, and we're going to convert that into an A minor chord by taking the middle finger off. Okay, and then I'm going to create a 7th chord the same way I did the last time. Again, you just need to learn what these chords are. And this is just a really sweet sounding chord. Now we go to the D, and I've got to go to a D minor chord. Okay, but I'm going to add that 9th in. There's a lot of different ways I could do that. Okay. Let's still go with this. Sounds really nice.
So guys, if you've heard something like The Thrill Is Gone, right? You're like, wow, this is really slow and it sounds kind of sad. That's because it's using minor chords, but you can still use that 1-4-5 structure. Does that make sense? Super cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. That's good stuff.
Steve, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you, sir.
Pleasure being with you, Dan.
I think we've thrown enough at them today. We've covered the 12-bar blues pretty in depth.